Okay, we are back live in 2021 with another Between the Pages book chat. And today we have fantasy author Darian Smith with us. Okay, with us.
We're still in holiday mode. I get it.
Yeah, apparently. Anyway, and we're going to be talking about his Agents of Kalanon series. Did I get that right?
You did, yeah.
Okay, and because he has book 2 and 3 came out last few months, so we'll be talking about those, and so we'll get right to it. But we'll let him introduce himself first. See, yeah, definitely Rusty. Okay, so
I feel
introduce
you. I'm still on
yourself
holiday.
and tell everyone who you are.
Hey, yeah. So I'm Darian, and I'm here in New Zealand, and I'm still on holiday as well. So yeah, this is going to be a fun interview. And yeah, I'm the author of the Agents of Kalanon series, which I describe as being murder mysteries in a fantasy world, kind of like CSI, but with swords and magic. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yes, and book 1 was a finalist in the Spiffbo competition too. If you didn't know that,
It was, yeah. That was book 1, Kalanon's Rising. Yeah, it was quite a ride, the Spiffbo contest. Very exciting, and I was really proud and pleased to place in there.
I entered my book in that particular competition as well. I didn't get quite as far as you did, but it was fun.
It was a tough competition. There were lots of really good books there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm following this year's too, and there's some really good books, and I've actually interviewed a couple of the authors that are in the finals too. So yeah, got my fingers crossed for a couple of people.
Yeah, there's also, I believe, a big finalist promotion coming up about the middle of January. So yeah, that will be a good opportunity for people to get some good books quite cheap.
Yeah, I think I already have a few. Yeah, all you nice authors that are coming on my show, I keep hearing about your books and going, "Ooh, I'd like to buy that." so thank you all for making my to be read list even bigger than it was.
Exactly.
But anyway, we'll get back to your series. So give us a little overview of the series and the 2 new books in the series.
Cool. So yeah, as I said, that kind of like murder mysteries, but in a fantasy world. So initially, in book 1, you kind of met the characters, and it's a bit of an ensemble cast. So the main character, Brannon, is he was a war hero in the war that happened a few years past in that particular world. And then he's tried to reinvent himself since, because he feels like he needs to balance the cosmic scales, I guess. And then there's been some mysterious, magical, dark, ritualistic type murders, including somebody in the royal family being killed. So the threat is, of course, that the war may come back. So he has to try and solve that murder and prevent the war and save the world. And so he runs into some other characters, including a priest who is extremely old but has just recently become young again and is a bit vain and strange, and a socially awkward priest. So that was a mage, the old mage, and then the priest. And then there's the ambassador from the country that they were at war with, who also has her own mysterious stuff going on. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and all these characters have different dark pasts and secrets. So it's a lot of fun to kind of get into and play with from my perspective, and hopefully to read as well. And so then they solved that initial mystery, obviously, in the first book, and then book 2 is Starlight's Children, which involves yet more magical murders and also some kidnappings. Children in the city are disappearing, and their parents are being found murdered with their hearts turned to glass, and so they have to figure out what's going on there. And then just in December, because hey, something good had to come out of 2020, right? Battle's Legacy, the third book, came out, and that took me quite a long time. It's a bit longer actually than the other 2, which surprised me. I thought it was going to be shorter, but no, it ended up being longer. And that harks back to the war again for these characters, and some sort of blast from the past and mysterious goings on. And again, magical murders that they have to solve. So you can kind of sense the theme. There's each of these books has some kind of mystery and kind of magical murder kind of scenario that needs to be solved. And then there's an overarching story through the series as well. And I'm looking forward to doing a bit more of that in the future books. So I've got a plan for 6 books total. And then we'll do a rethink as to whether I think it can keep going or whether I want to stop there. But yeah, so 6 books will be the total, but each one you can read on its own, and there's a satisfying conclusion to that. And then book 4, I'm hoping will come out towards the end of this year, and that will be Mercury's Return, where if you've read it and know the ambassador Ilani, she's going to take some of the gang back to her country. So there's going to be some interesting developments in there.
Oh, so that should be an interesting perspective change for the series.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the characters. I read in a review in book 2 that you focus a little more on some of the secondary characters as opposed to the main character from book 1. So tell us a little bit about how the characters developed.
Yeah, so I kind of like this sort of ensemble cast idea, and I do often, as I say, I often think of it as being like a CSI type show. So in those shows, you will often see that each of the characters have their own stuff going on, and the perspective will shift a little bit. So there's a little bit of that in there. I mean, Brennan is still definitely the main character, but the others have their own development happening. And so you can see from the covers, there's a different character on each one. And that's, I guess, to try and give an indication that there will be some kind of development or some kind of secrets or something revealed about that character in that book. So yeah, I've kind of got that intention. So obviously in book 4, when I mentioned, Yolani is going to be taking them back to Neela, so she's going to be on the cover of book 4. But in Battle's Legacy, it is Drayson, the mage. And so if people have read the first couple of books, they'll know that Drayson is essentially a grumpy old man in a young body, very powerful mage, but a bit of a slave to his hormones and trying to, I guess, he's been old and arthritic and uncomfortable in an elderly body for something like 300 or 400 years, and now suddenly he's youthful again. So he's been making the most of that. And so there's a bit of development that needs to happen for his character to kind of go, okay, need to settle down, need to be a bit sensible. And also, what are the repercussions of some of the things that he's done? And how did he get to be youthful again, as opposed to continuing in his other body? So yeah, there's some interesting developments that come through in Battle's Legacy for him.
Okay, so would any of your characters describe themselves as a hero, and why or why not?
Ooh, Brannon is most often described by other people as a hero. So he's known as a war hero. People call him the Bloodhawk because he was kind of a battle berserker sort of person in the war. He doesn't like that name at all, and since then he's been trying to atone for some of that stuff. So he wouldn't call himself a hero, but he gets called a hero. Drayson probably would. He's the mage, and he feels that he's dedicated his life to the protection of Kalanon through magic. So yeah, he would probably consider himself to be a hero. I'm not sure that other people would. So it's kind of the interesting contrast there as to people's or the characters' perceptions of themselves versus everyone else's perception of them.
Yeah, that's always fun. So tell us a little bit about the antagonists in book 2 and 3.
So in book 2, there appears to be some sort of creature that is taking children and freezing their parents' hearts into glass. So it's a bit strange. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah. So that's what they're trying to hunt down, figure that out. And in book 3 in Battle's Legacy, there's, again, I don't want to give too much away, but what they're facing is a character that they've seen before that they think could be the bad guy, but we'll have to find out. But what's actually happening is that the kind of atrocities that happened during the war are returning and revisiting around people. So there's this whole question as to what's causing that, and is it, some sort of karma, I guess, or is somebody trying to make a point, or what's going on? So yeah, it's a little bit tricky for them to have to face up to what, some of these characters have to face up to what they did in the war, which at the time seemed like it was necessary, and probably was, to protect the country, but was actually also pretty awful.
Okay, so do you have any themes that run through the series?
I think there's probably a bit of a theme of trying to find what's right, trying to do the right thing, and also what are the boundaries of loyalty versus rightness. And certainly, yeah, for Brandon and again for Drayson, actually, yeah, probably for for a lot of the characters, actually, it's that notion of loyalty and patriotism and all that sort of stuff versus what's right, and how far do you go with one before it compromises the other. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to play with, I guess, and it's something for all of us to kind of figure out what's our own morality, how much do we defend people or countries or organizations or whatever when they go awry, or when they're not doing what's right. So,
Maybe a bit timely these days too.
Maybe, yeah.
we won't get into that. Did you have any trouble with any of the scenes writing in book 2 or book 3?
I got quite stuck, and I'm learning that this is my process. And I've heard this from a number of other authors, that the tendency is to get a little bit stuck in the middle of the book. And I am a planner, so I tend to have it planned out. Although I planned a little bit more fuzzily for Battle's Legacy, and then at one point I had to stop and go, okay, I really need to work out the rest of this plan. And I think I kind of get caught in the middle of it, and I'll quite often go out to my wife, who's also a writer, and go, oh my god, I've lost my mojo, I don't know what I'm doing, what's happening, and she'll be like, just go back in and carry on, because that seems to be how it works, is I kind of get a bit uncertain, I guess, in the middle, and then push through, and by the end it's like, oh, okay, no, I actually just needed to trust the process and take the next step. And
I know how you feel. I know how it begins, how it ends, and then I have to connect the two, and it's like, okay, where the heck am I going?
And it's also, I think I get stuck in my head sometimes, because these are murder mysteries, so I'm kind of like, okay, I need to be really careful about where I reveal things, and I'm dropping hints but not necessarily revealing what's going on, and then I have to change mindset partway through the book and go, okay, no, actually now's the time they need to they need to work this out now, they need to learn this now. So then once I realize that, I'm like, oh, okay, we're on the home stretch, we can give the things away, this is good.
So what is it like putting together the mystery part of the books?
It's fun, but it's also kind of challenging, and the weird thing for me, of course, is reader feedback, and you get some people who are like, oh, I completely didn't see that coming, and then you get other people who go, oh yeah, I totally saw that coming. And as long as they're enjoying it anyway, if they did see it coming, that's fine. But I tend to like to make sure that there's at least enough twists and surprise that there's a surprise for somebody. Even if you're a real murder mystery buff and you pretty much always predict it. That's me when I'm watching murder mystery shows. My wife hates me to speak. I've been told I'm not allowed to anymore, because normally about a third of the way through at the most, I'll be like, oh, that one did it and this is why. And she's like, no, don't do that. You've ruined it. so there are those of us who spot that. But I like to make sure there's at least some surprises in there for them. And I'm not maybe I'm giving this away too much, but I do like to put clues in there because I think it's not fair if you suddenly pull a solution out of a hat that there was no clue about earlier.
Yeah, you need the
so
clues.
so that's the trick, is to try and place some clues without giving too much away, but also put in some red herrings and all of that sort of stuff. So it can be quite fun, and that's why I do the planning part, so that I can kind of look at the grand scheme of things and go, okay, here's where I should give a little hint about this, and it'll pay off over here, and that kind of thing.
Okay, so do you have a favorite scene in either book 2 or 3?
Oh, I love the action scenes. So the big kind of fight conclusion-y stuff is always fun, and I love to see the bad guys get their comeuppance. So I always enjoy that. In book 3 as well, there's a little bit more, not romance per se, but there's a relationship developing between a couple of the characters that goes a little bit further in this book. So that was kind of fun to do. It's not really my wheelhouse. I have written a paranormal romance before, and I found it incredibly difficult. So yeah, kind of doing that sort of developing relationship stuff was kind of fun, but challenging at the same time.
Yeah, the romance writers make it look easy writing the romance, don't they?
They do, and yeah, my hat is off to anyone who writes romance, because that is a challenging genre, and they are powerhouses. They certainly know what they're doing.
Yeah, they do. So what are your characters afraid of?
I would say they're mostly afraid of stuffing up and people having to pay the consequences of that. Brandon in particular is terrified of having to go back to being the Bloodhawk. He really doesn't want that to be his only legacy in life, to be the guy who goes out and kills a lot of people. So that's a big driving force for him. Any time that, particularly in book 1, where this whole thing kicks off, he's not that interested in solving murders for a living, but that's the thing that keeps him motivated, is that if he doesn't solve this, then does that mean the countries go back to war, because it looks like it was an attack from the other countries. So that's a big fear for him, is having to go back to what he was in the war.
Okay, so obviously you write fantasy, and you said you wrote paranormal romance. Are there any other genres that you'd like to write or have written in?
I've done a little bit of literary fiction in short stories, which has been kind of fun. I'm planning to do a young adult urban fantasy coming up. And other than that, I've dabbled a little bit in nonfiction as well. I come from a psychology, counseling, family therapy kind of background. And so I wrote the psychology workbook for writers, which takes a lot of those theories and adapts them and essentially corrupts them to help writers to create characters and conflict in their stories. So that was quite fun for me, and I do a bit of speaking on that topic, actually, and a lot of people seem to find it helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be helpful when writing villains who want to psychologically torture someone.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to understand why they're villains. I'm very much I like to know that there's a reason behind it, other than somebody woke up one day and went, ha ha ha, I'm going to be evil.
Nobody wakes up and says they're going to be evil. I watch a lot of true crime shows, things about serial killers and stuff like that. And yeah, there's always reasons behind it, and bad childhoods usually.
Very often bad childhoods, yes. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. People get quite caught up in, oh, you're excusing them, and it's like, it's not an excuse, because there's lots of people with bad childhoods who then go on to not be serial killers. but it's good to understand, this is where this comes from. It doesn't just appear in isolation. So yeah, and I think for us as writers, that's really important knowledge to have.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
Thank you. So you can find me on my website, which is darian-smith.com, or on Facebook. You can look me up there, or on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Darian Wordsmith, or of course Amazon, the big temple of books. Go look me up on there, and you will find all of my books there.
Okay, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
And Between the Pages, we'll be back, not next weekend. Well, we will be back next weekend, but we will be back first on Wednesday with the rescheduled chat with C.T. Phipps. So join us then as we talk about his book, I Was a Teenage Were-Deer, which sounds very interesting.
I'm going to have to read that now.
Yeah, and we'll probably be talking a little superheroes too on Wednesday. So join us then. And then we will be back next weekend as well. So bye for now.